assignment. So this is how I would begin the assignment focus. Introduction. The history of development thinking is one that originated in the colonial era and throughout the years has been overbearing, with different views from scholars and social scientists as to what should constitute the concept. Today, the development discourse, as a multidimensional process, aligns itself with the betterment of human life in society. This assignment identifies and analyzes the implications of social exclusions on development. Development today is increasingly about how we survive the future rather than how we improve on the past, according to McMichael 2016. As such, the present development agenda is one that is linked with the emerging state of society. Although there are contrasting views of what should constitute development, according to Kotari and Manoog, 2002, the underlying common factor is that the agenda on development is about addressing issues on poverty reduction, economic growth, democratization, and social development. However, asymmetrical these issues are, they link either directly or indirectly to the prevalence of society as a whole. So, development in practice is a product of interaction between the state, market, and civil society. Development is then understood as a philosophy that is set out to advance the quality of human life. However, as Corton suggests, the heart, and I quote, "The heart of development is institutions and policies." This then assumes that for there to be progress in state-led development, there should be systematic relationship existing between individuals, meaning groups, and institutions, as development is built on the ideal of the social contract between government and civil society. However, the reality of a social contract is subsumed by the failure or incapacity of institutions of development to readdress and implement policies that enable access to education, basic health care advantages, housing, and moreover, policies that allow the civil society to gain access to new opportunities and be an opportunistic advantage of gaining already existing opportunities to better their lives. For the reality of production and reproduction of real material life, ideally, policies that seek to help prevent exposure of the civil society to hardship and deprivation should be realized for a sustainable society with self-reliance and freely progressive. Failure for this reality to be met erodes hard-won social rights and public entitlement. Human life in society as a result is challenged by the existence of such deprivations. These deprivations are linked to the prominence of social exclusion as a process through which there is an imbalance of allocation of resources, imbalance to accessing rights, and means imperative for the development of humans. According to Popeye 2008, such social exclusions may be identified as, now this is in the context in which now I give examples of such social exclusions. 1. Exclusions from welfare. I quote Lang et al. 2013, where individuals with impairments have probability to look for improvement of health, but are at a disadvantage in getting satisfactory health care. Moreover, chances of security to having normal forms of occupation, and in this manner are unable to cover for their well-being. We all have an understanding of insurance companies, we have an understanding of medical aids, particularly in our country, that there's an extent of exclusion from welfare in which well-deserving groups have more chances of actually having better healthcare than others. And we could make many examples, particularly in our townships, where the majority of our people actually depend on the public healthcare system, where you see many videos circulating on the internet about people having to be in long lines, people having to queue in lines from 4 a.m. in the morning and still not have found assistance by 5 p.m. So these are some of the challenges that we face and we are exposed to. So these can form part of exclusions to welfare rather, sorry. Now we also have exclusion from equality of opportunity, exemplified through destructive laws and approaches with boundaries that refrain or restrain a compelling HIV reaction, which is particularly harmful to the greater populace that is already facing marginalization. Now, you would find good examples in some African countries where there are no democratic processes, in which the government takes policies or assumes policies that do not really form as the betterment of the society of that particular nation. So many examples that you could look at. We look at also the exclusion from education. Now, this is where imbalances endure in schooling. In spite of the fact that numerous more young ladies are presently in institutions of learning, children with inabilities and those from devout or ethnic minorities and those in further areas still do have limitations. Inadequate ingress to facilities of learning, according to Hussein, 2010. As it were, 10% of children with incapacities are enrolled in schools, according to Miles and Single, 2010. Prohibition from such schools has numerous impacts, propagating destitution. Such children in schools confront issues pertaining to unjust effectiveness in learning when such schools are unable to meet the contrasting particular needs of children. These groups of pupils who are at a disadvantage mostly become exposed to ineffective teaching methods, disability-friendly educational facilities, and at the least materials used for learning. Now, also exclusion from education is important, particularly if you make a case in point in South Africa. There was a period of unrest where we called it the fees must fall protest. And during that period in time, students were protesting against the exorbitant pricings of registrations, tuition fees, residence. So at the time, students fought against this particular ideal, that there's an exclusion from education, particularly by those who are marginalized or considered not to be able to afford, financially that is, to be part of such institutions of higher learning. So that was the struggle that had ensued in 2016, I believe. So we see how that also forms part of exclusion from education. Now we have exclusion to property. And I think you could make a good example in terms of the land rights. You could make a good example of the ongoing debate on land expropriation without compensation. I think there have been many or numerous incidences in which that particular topic is being debated across different sectors, different government departments. So you could also look at that exclusion to property and exclusion to land rights. This is where the plan of offices is significant to make them open to people with disability in some other regions in the world. Specialized boundaries, incorporate steps, tallness, and separate from offices, need of transportation and unacceptable hardware, while social obstructions incorporate systems in which there will be less access to property based on people's level of income, people's backgrounds, or various areas in which they reside in. So these are some of the things or the problems that come as a result of exclusion to property. So we also have economic exclusion, which is exemplified through how pot makers in other areas of the world are unable to make use of available opportunities of employment in that area of study, to some degree due to insufficiency or unavailability of the needed skills, knowledge base, and beforehand meeting the experience criteria to be recognized for formal positions. See, now I make an example of pot makers, but if you want to explore it further, you could look at the current state of South Africa, where we import most of the things that we consume. You would have individuals who are able to make toothpicks, for one, but we import our toothpicks from China. So you see how some of these individuals may be excluded into forming economic positions where they could better their lives, in which they could be the biggest manufacturers of toothpicks within South Africa, but would be otherwise excluded because South Africa imports such skills and imports such services, or rather such products, which would be the toothpicks that we use in South Africa. So essentially, in conclusion, these implications of social exclusions I have identified in respect to development are deeply rooted on the notion that development is realized through a triad system consisting of an interrelation between the state, civil society, and the market. According to Gordon, 1990, the most, and I quote, "the most fundamental issues of development are, at their core, issues of power." Close quote. This entails that for there to exist issues on development, primarily social development, there is a series of social deprivation in which the community or civil society's improvement of quality of human life is not realized by the representatives they put in power. This is realized through the examples I've indicated that serve as evidence as to how the state, which gifts fundamental rights and gracious freedoms, is not an impartial organization, but in fact a vehicle of society's overwhelming classes, and may in this way segregate between social groups. Well, I hope you had fun breaking that assignment topic with me, and I hope I've given you a wholesome approach to how you could approach such a topic question in which you have to identify and analyze the implications of social exclusions on development by using relevant examples to support your sessions. So hope to see you on the other one. All the best with your academic studies. Signing out. Let's go.